Good evening, everyone. Apologies for the slightly late start. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. As always, just a reminder that when you're speaking to use your microphone, speak into it clearly so that everyone in the room can hear you, and it can be picked up on the webcast as well, because we are being recorded so that people can watch online afterwards. Also, the acoustics in this room aren't great. It's a little bit echoey. So today, more than ever, can you just try to make sure that only one person is speaking at a time, no kind of chatting amongst yourselves, please, if possible, just so that everyone can hear clearly what's being said. Okay, number one on the agenda is apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Widdowson, Councillor Knight and Councillor Smalley. Councillor Nichols, I think is... Oh, you're here, right. Great. Also, we've got apologies from Matt Boxall, Head of Public Protection. He would usually be here and wanted to be here, but he's got somewhere else that he really needs to be this evening. So he sends his apologies too. Next on the agenda is declarations of interest. Do any committee members have any disclosable pecuniary interests to declare? Yeah, Councillor Kilbane.
Thank you, Chair. It's not really disclosable pecuniary interest. However, given the item number 6, street trading consent, I'm the executive member with the responsibility for economy. So in many respects, Make It York will be answerable to me in the first instance. So I think for that item, just for the sake of transparency, I will sit that out, if that's all right, Chair, and come back for item 7.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is minutes. We have minutes to approve from the 11th of June, 2024. Does anybody have any points of accuracy that they'd like to raise? I have a couple. Or maybe just one, actually. On page 9, there's a paragraph about under the bullet points, about halfway down the page, about political party manifestos, which currently says, the chair noted that the Labour, the Conservatives and the Green Party had not published their manifestos. I've checked the webcast of actually exactly what I'd said, so I would like to change that sentence to, the chair noted that the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrat manifestos make no mention of taxis and private hire. The Labour Party had not published their manifesto. That's almost word for word what I said in the actual meeting. Is everybody happy with that amendment? Yeah, does anybody have any other amendments or points of accuracy to raise on the minutes? Are you happy to approve those in an accurate record? Okay, great, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is public participation. We've got a few people registered to speak today. I think everybody's in the room. Yeah, no one online. Okay, so first we've got Andrea Piet, who's speaking on agenda item 6, street trading consent policy. Would you like to come and join us at the table at the bottom there? There's a microphone which you've used before, so I think you know how to use it, don't you? There's a button in the middle. You've got up to 3 minutes to speak. Just start in your own time whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, elected members. My name is Andrea Piet, and I'm here again to address the ongoing issues with the street trading policy, particularly those raised in Mr. Boxall's report. I'll focus on 2 key points. First, there is the issue of blue badge access in the city centre. This concern was raised by Councillor Melly in our recent meeting between street traders, Make It York, and the licensing department. While I recognize this is a complex and urgent issue, it's important to note that prior to changes in 2019, trading pitches operated smoothly and without conflicts with blue badge holders for decades. The challenge of city centre accessibility for blue badge holders cannot be fairly attributed to the street trading pitches, given this issue did not previously exist. Second, I must address the balance of power. Make It York is a unique entity, both a private company focused on maximizing profit, and as the council is the only stakeholder, it is functionally a part of York City Council. Some elected council members on this committee have ties, past or present, to Make It York, which makes this situation immensely difficult to navigate for York street traders, as we are only able to petition our case to York Council through this committee. The most important thing that I hope to show you is that granting Make It York unrestricted control over street trading pitches through their authority over the space that we occupy is an extreme and drastic measure. As a group, the traders are very grateful to Make It York, as well as Matt Boxall and Leslie Cook for taking the time to meet with us in the busiest season of the year. However, it was made clear in the meeting we had that while traders have come prepared with proposals which we felt were offered in a spirit of cooperation and compromise, Make It York is unwilling to accept any arrangement that does not guarantee them full freedom to use these pitches without constraint. It is for the benefit of their convenience while organizing the layout of the Christmas market that the livelihoods and existence of these businesses are being threatened. I ask you, how is it justifiable to remove us from our pitches during the busiest seasons without consultation, fair relocation options, or assurances that such removal is essential for public safety and not merely a strategy to increase profit by leasing these pitches to other temporary outside companies? Overcrowding, accessibility, and crowd safety are indeed pressing and important issues, as Mr. Boxall's report emphasizes. But I urge you to consider, how did the street trading pitches cause these issues, and how could removing us effectively resolve them? These spaces are not overcrowded during other peak events, such as when the Food Festival or the Eye of York are located on St. Sampson's Square, and they were not problematic before 2014. The issue is not with us, and removing us will not solve the problem either. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak to us this evening. The next speaker is Margaret Rush. Again, please come and join us at the table. There's a microphone in front of you. If you just press a little button in the middle that says mic, that should light up, and then just begin whenever you're ready. Thanks.
Okay, I'll start again. I thought that was on, sorry. My name is Margaret Rush. Together with my husband Graham, we run Graham's Ices Limited, an ice cream sales company based in York. We've been trading for 50 years. The company started in 1974. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak again this evening. This is my second submission to this committee. As a member of the York Street Traders Association, I attended the October 24th meeting between street traders, licensing and Make It York with Councillor Melly present, a gesture which was greatly appreciated, and we would like to publicly acknowledge that. We have worked very hard to find compromises and proposals towards a satisfactory conclusion for everyone. We came to that meeting hoping for open and honest discussion, but unfortunately felt at times we were met with a brick wall. Make It York appeared reluctant to agree to anything short of unrestricted control over the city centre trading pitches during their events. In the update report, section 24 states that Make It York are willing to guarantee an alternative pitch within the event footprint. However, they are unwilling to guarantee specific pitches or even consult with traders about possible locations. This means that traders could be moved to unviable trading locations even within the footprint of the Christmas market. And as this period is critical to the viability of businesses, please understand that this amendment could be as damaging as not being able to trade at all. At the meeting, Make It York also failed to give any justifiable explanation for needing control over the pitches during their events. When asked, they could not provide any details of their plans for the space, stating they needed to wait until January 2025 to reassess. In order to make a fully informed decision, the council must be made aware of Make It York's proposed plans for future events before any vote is taken. Make It York are asking to permanently manipulate the future of street trading in York for the convenience of a blank canvas. City centre traders have operated successfully in York for decades, long before Make It York was established in 2014. And we are asking for your continued support of the street trading scheme in York, which has been the foundation for our family businesses and those who came before us. We request that councillors make it very clear to policy writers that the future of these independent and local businesses is to be safeguarded over the commercial gains of a private company. In my last submission to this committee, I respectfully reminded our elected representatives and those employed by our local council that local residents and local businesses expect honesty, transparency, and above all, fairness when decisions are made. Make It York is owned 100% by City of York Council.
You've had 3 minutes
Local-
now, so do you mind wrapping up, please?
2 lines.
Great, thank you.
Local councillors are among its directors. Councillors with links to Make It York should admit to those connections clearly and publicly and abstain from any vote which clearly presents a significant conflict of interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak to us this evening. The next speaker is Tom Jackson. And again, you've done this before, so I think you know how to use the microphone and everything. Just come and join us at the table and start whenever you're ready, and you've got up to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
It's still on. Thanks. Hello, councillors. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. I'd also like to publicly thank Matt and the licensing team for the time they've shown us over the past few weeks and the hard work that's gone into this report. I'd like to just briefly address section 7 of the report, which notes an existing condition for street trading, which follows. On occasion, it is necessary for a vehicle or unit on a static site to move location. We appreciate that there are times when we need to be moved for essential roadworks, the installation of the bollards on Parliament Street being a prime example, and we have moved on request in the past under similar circumstances. Using this clause, however, to somehow justify relocation of street traders for the clear commercial gains of another private company was surely not the original intention of the legislation. Councillors, I ask for it to be made very clear in any amendment to the policy that street traders would only be asked to move under reasons of emergency highway maintenance. We must avoid the abuse of this rule by any party for commercial gain. Moving on, I'd like to explain why Make It York's request for a blank canvas is simply unjustifiable, specifically in relation to my pictures on St Sampson's Square, which seems to be a real thorn in their side. It's clear that their use of St Sampson's Square during the Christmas market needs to be addressed, as the current arrangements contribute to foot flow and overcrowding issues during the Christmas market. During the market, Make It York places roughly 26 chalets at 9 metres squared each on St Sampson's Square. That's 234 square metres. They then place several much larger food vendors on the taxi ranks and the edges of the square. Altogether, they occupy a conservative estimate of 350 square metres on St Sampson's Square, while my 2 stalls combined just take 9.6 square metres. Why are we being singled out as the issue? Granting them the power to move us from our original pitches is a drastic step with severe potential impacts on us. We are yet to hear any justifiable reason to support this request. Councillors, Make It York's request is plain. They don't want to lose any of their space at future markets. They don't want to lose their chalets, their revenue, and they'd much rather push out small, long-standing York businesses, putting us to the torch to maximise their own interests. Please make it clear that that is not acceptable. Show that you stand with the real York businesses that have served this city for decades. Matt Boxall has generously agreed that creating a map marking fixed street trading pitches is a productive step, but please go further and secure our futures as fixtures of the city, not as afterthoughts. Please show that the council value us just as much as the trees, utility boxes, lampposts and signage, which I imagine Make It York haven't requested to rip out as part of their blank canvas agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming to speak to us again on this topic. Thank you very much. The final speaker in public participation is Lisa Grimbley, who would like to come and join us at the table. The microphone's already on, so just start whenever you're ready, and you've got up to 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Make It York. Firstly, I'd like to thank the licensing for their approach to the consultation of the draft street trading consent policy. Make It York programme of events supports and contributes to making the city centre a vibrant place for residents and for visitors. The increased footfall provides economic benefits for all the surrounding businesses and attractions. Make It York have reviewed the street trading consent policy update, and we accept point 11 of the report, which refers to section 8.2 of the draft street trading consent policy. This is a compromise for Make It York. Our preferred option is to be able to utilise the entire event footprint for Make It York delivered events. We aim to change and evolve what we deliver and to select traders using our fair criteria-based process to achieve a balanced market that is fair for everyone to apply. This includes the food and drink offering. Our preference is always to use local York traders, and that's high on the criteria that we've set. We fully evaluate each event and use the findings to improve what we do. This results in changes to site plans and the layout, and we have done that this year. The event which impacts most on City of York Council street traders is the Christmas market. The planning for the 2025 market will have to start in January. The event which impacts, we would like to know the outcome of the policy so that we can plan and factor in City of York Council street traders for 2025. We've got to take into account lots of contributing factors as part of our planning process. In summary, Make It York is agreeable to offer space to City of York Council street traders within the footprint of Make It York events. We will ensure that space is allocated so that they are working in line with the conditions of their City of York Council street trading consent conditions. This has not always been the case. Some traders remain in situ at certain times at events and they don't move off site. That's one example. We would also like them to agree to work within Make It York terms and conditions and provide the relevant documents that we require from our traders. And this is food hygiene rating, equipment test certificates, public liability insurance and site safety checks. We also need to be assured that they will comply to any reasonable requests from Make It York, as do Make It York source traders.
You've had 3 minutes now, so could you start to wrap up, please?
Yeah. Should a street trader wish to be considered for a specific location, we will look at that. However, those specific pitch fees would apply. If the policy is endorsed, Make It York would like to request consideration be given to factor in a review to see how the policy is working and if further changes need to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak to us this evening. Thank you to all our public participants. Next on the agenda, number 5 is review of pavement cafe guidance. So I'll ask officers to introduce that. Oh, Councillor Waters, we don't have any debate or discussion on public participation, but it's later.
Well, it's just to say that because all the public participation has been about agenda item 6, I just wondered whether it would make sense to bring that forward rather than have the public participants sat with something they're not really interested in.
Well, I don't really want to reorder the agenda because we've got officers and everyone prepared for this order. The agenda's already been published in this order. We shouldn't spend too long on agenda item 5.
Good evening. My name is Helen Bergeron. I'm the head of Highway Access and Development for City of York Council. I come tonight to present to you some changes to the pavement cafe license guidance. And I come from the highway team because this is on adopted highways generally. And this report or similar report with the similar changes were presented to the executive member for transport in July. But as changes to the guidance require approval by the Licensing and Regulatory Committee, I'm here tonight to present similar report to this committee. So some of these changes described in the report are changes that are made by law that we can't really decide, we just have to implement them. Other changes were made through full council decisions because they were around fees and charges. So that was decided at the time of the last decision on fee and charges. So the changes that I'm presenting to you tonight are quite limited. But we are proposing to, let's see if I go into recommendations. Sorry, these new report formats throw me every time. It's because we've got a new report format for transport, so. The proposals for tonight, so it's around what qualifies as a new or renewal application, just to make sure that the wording is very clear. It's around the width that should remain available on footways. The updated government guidance talks about 2 meters in normal circumstances, but with a minimum of 1.5 meters where 2 meters are not available. So we propose to keep our minimum width at 1.5, as many of York streets don't even have 2 meters on a footway available. And then we propose a change to the provision of toilets. This is because our current guidance requires the provision of toilets, but we've actually had applications from traders and businesses who don't have toilets. So a trading unit or potentially a bubble tea type shop don't necessarily have toilets for their customer, but they could be eligible for a pavement cafe if there is space suitable outside. So these are the changes that I'm bringing to you tonight.
Thank you very much. So we'll have questions now. I'd quite like to do it in the order that it's laid out in the report. In the report, it goes through several issues in the guidance, starting on page 19 with the licensing fees. What level the licensing fee should be set at was decided as part of the budget setting process back in February. So we're not making a decision on that tonight, but does anyone have any questions about the fees? Yeah, Councillor Mason?
Thanks. I just wondered if you knew what would be expected to happen in the next budget round, if it would just be an inflationary increase, or does it get looked at again? Is it fixed once we fix the policy, or does it have an inflationary increase? Or
so we've set the fees at the maximum allowable under the national legislation, so we won't be able to review them, but I would imagine we would keep them at the maximum. We are not quite recovering cost when it's at the maximum, and we are aiming for cost recovery as a minimum.
so so that fee is kind of fixed forever, basically, until they change it. There's no inflation. Okay.
No.
Any other questions about fees? Any questions about license duration? That's something else that I think was decided as part of the budget setting process. We're not making a decision this evening, but does anyone have any questions about it? No? Okay. The consultation and determination period for applications. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Enforcement. Any questions about enforcement under this policy? The remaining available width for pedestrians. Councillor Rivilius.
Obviously, I should have asked this first time around when it came to the Transport Committee, but when we're thinking about places where the pavement cafe could stretch a long way, like across Parliament Square, is it possible for us to set a maximum width for the pavement cafe?
It would be possible only if there was a need for the highway to be available. So if it's needed for pedestrians to pass, for a trading unit, or whatever you could imagine might be needed in the highway. But it's not possible to refuse an application simply because we think it's too big or anything like that. If the space is available and we can license the area, then there are no reasons for us to refuse.
Is it supplementary?
Supplementary. Yeah. So if, for example, I mean, that highway space can be used in a number of ways. So I'm thinking of Parliament Square. We used to have some cycle racks there. Now they've removed. If at some point we wanted to put cycle racks back, but a pavement cafe had got the space, how would we decide what the best use of the space was? Do we have some say? Do we need a policy around that?
The Highway Authority has the power to reduce the pavement cafe area if the highway is needed for another purpose. So if we decided that cycle racks are needed, we could reduce.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason?
Thanks. Just to follow up on that one first, is there a kind of notice period, or is that something we build into the policy about if we were going to change something like that? I'm just thinking a business invests into having an outdoor area and then 2 weeks later we say, oh, actually we want that back.
Yeah, so there isn't a notice period as such in the policy or the guidance document, we would always try to give notice. Obviously, if it was works to be happening to install cycle parking, that would be a consultation process, etc. So I think that would be quite a lot of notice given. There are other, however, instances of, you know, street works, something is needed, drainage, something needs repairing where we can't give notice, but usually that's for quite short periods.
And my substantive question was, I think it's mentioned a few places in all fairness, but point 21 talks about it as well. So level pedestrian areas where you've got a level road and footpath, which is on the same level. Obviously, we've talked before about this and certain examples, but I know at that point we said about the routes for blue badges entering the city were exempt from that. I didn't, and forgive me, it's a big report with lots of paragraphs in it. I didn't see any reference to that. So is that still in force? Has that changed?
So where there are no blue badge cars allowed, for example, let's think of Coney Street, we would allow pavement cafes on what is the pavement, but because it's all level, it's easy for somebody to go around even in a wheelchair or with a mobility aid. So we allow that. Where blue badge holders are allowed, we need to think of areas where they can park and as well as areas where vehicles need to go through. And so that means that in those areas, we wouldn't allow the footway to be used because people need to be able to get out of the way of vehicles coming through.
It just wasn't, it just talked about level things, didn't really spell that out, I didn't feel, in this one. And then the last one, which I suppose, I'm not sure really kind of is covered, but private spaces. I know there's plans or talk about, do we start regulating Bishy Road, Front Street, where it's private land, but it's kind of feels like it's a public space or whatever the technical words are for it. I just wondered where that's kind of covered in this.
No, so that's not covered in this. This was taken to the executive member for transport decision session, and the recommendation was that we would start working with venues in those private spaces to make sure that they are regularized. We've not done that so far because for a long time this legislation was temporary, so we felt that it would have been a bit too much to go through these processes. But now that it's set as legislation, permanent arrangements, we do need to regularize these areas. And it might be that some of them are licensed, it might be that some of them will look at stopping up the highway. There's a mix, but we will have to work with individual businesses really to find the best solution. So it will take a little while.
Any timescales on that kind of that initial consultation work?
We are aiming to work on that at the start of 2025, I think, just in terms of work program and resources.
Super, thank you.
Councillor Willis, did you have another question about remaining width? Yeah, go ahead.
Just in terms of thinking of Coney Street, if lots of venues were to apply for a pavement cafe and we end up with, would we potentially end up with just a 2-meter corridor on Coney Street? And I'm just thinking here about, we obviously also have to consider overcrowding problems, and at Christmas, we're particularly thinking about the terrorism threat. So what's the score there in terms of, do we reassess the pavement cafe license at busy times of year because it's then a risk in another way?
So generally that would always be a 3-meter corridor available because we need that for emergency services access. So unless the fire services agreed with us, usually at the end of a dead end street where they know that they wouldn't go through anyway, they might agree, but otherwise we would always keep the 3-meter corridor. In terms of events, the larger events would go through the SAG. And if the SAG say that actually that might be an issue, we need more space, there might be overcrowding, then yes, we would be able to review pavement cafe licenses temporarily during the event or something like that, but we've not done that so far.
Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Chair. Just for a bit of comparison, what do you as the Highways Authority impose on new developers in terms of pavement width?
Generally 2 meters where it's possible.
Councillor Villiers?
I was just going to say, with this E paragraph, would it be possible to just add a bit of clarification here about the minimum corridor that must remain available? So, because we've said 2 meters when it's pavement, but 3 meters in the situations of where it's level access, and there must always be vehicle access. It'd just be good to have some clarification in that paragraph, I think.
So this paragraph is specifically about footways or pavements. The 3 meters is carriageway. So the 3 meters would always be on the road or in terms of Coney Street, the center, if you want, because
Okay,
it's so level, but that's for vehicular access, emergency services. In terms of on the footway, where a footway might be, say, 4 meters wide, we might be able to license somebody to use part of that footway and still keep a 1.5 meter corridor. And that's the minimum allowable under the guidance, and generally what is seen as sufficient for wheelchair access, people with guide dogs. However, it doesn't mean that it'll be easy access. If it's busy, maybe people will have to wait to let each other pass. But we see that quite often on streets in York generally, because they are quite narrow in a lot of areas.
So is that an issue about how much needs to be kept in the highway compared to how much has to be kept in the footway? Is that elsewhere in the guidance?
So the 3 meters is in the existing guidance. We're not proposing to change that because it's a requirement for emergency services.
Thanks. Are there any other questions about remaining width for pedestrians or total space taken? Councillor Mason?
Just going back, I suppose, to that trade-off between level areas and the ones that are still classed as a blue badge corridor, if that's the word to use. Is there going to be something to look at that on a kind of case-by-case basis where people can apply and have those kind of conversations where they think, you know, it works? I know, for example, King Square, where there is examples of that, where something could be possible. Where I think something could be possible, but it's on a blue badge corridor.
If a trader or a business were to approach us, and we would review, but obviously the issue with the blue badge corridor is there are more vehicles coming through and we need to park. So we need to make sure the space is available for that. And there is a safe space for pedestrians to get out of the way of the vehicles. So yes, on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, shall we move on to cumulative impact? Does anybody have any questions about cumulative impact? No, okay, permitted furniture. Any questions about permitted furniture? This was something that has been discussed, like while this policy has been reviewed. I did ask about other things that cause, other sorts of furniture that cause obstructions on pavements, like A-boards and menu stands and that sort of thing, which also cause obstructions and trip hazards, and asked whether it was possible to incorporate that into this policy. Do you want to tell the committee what you told me?
So basically the legislation makes it clear that this is only about furniture for food and drinks. So it can't include any advertising board, A-boards, all this type of, that can be dealt with under the Highways Act, generally as an obstruction.
Any other questions about permitted furniture? No. Any questions about definition of renewal versus new license? Because there's different fees depending on if it's a renewal or a new application. No, okay. Yeah, go ahead, councillor Kilbane.
Ellen, did you say that these fees don't cover costs?
No, they don't fully, no.
So if people think we're renting out the spaces of York in order to make a load of money, we're actually losing money.
Yeah, because we need officer time to review all the documents, go visit the site, and then after that we use officer time. We actually use a subcontractor to check. So they will go out and take some pictures and then report back to officers if something is not compliant. So all that officer time, when you think of £350 for a full year, it doesn't cover it at all.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions about the changes in the guidance about provision of toilets? I think this was something that came through consultation, feedback from street traders and others who can't provide toilets, wanting to be able to grab furniture. Any questions about that? No. I think those are all the issues that have kind of been highlighted and explained in the report. While this kind of guidance review has been going on, and with, you know, various council have had discussions with Elen and officers, some of the other things we discussed were things like, because one of the conditions is that pavement cafe furniture has to be enclosed with a barrier, and very often there's kind of alcohol branding and alcohol advertising on there. I asked if there was anything we could do to condition that in terms of family-friendly city centre and health impacts. So I asked if it was possible to have put conditions on about alcohol branding. If you want to tell the committee what you told me.
So it could be considered as advertising, but the planning team don't think it's because it's not permanent, it's just a barrier that's being put out, so that doesn't really fall under planning. As a city, we could potentially change the guidance as it is currently and impose a certain style or, but obviously we've got to be conscious of cost for the businesses, because a lot of these are provided cheap or almost free because they are advertising. And also we did consider maybe something more bland, maybe like a gray color or a black color, but that's not very good if you've got a guide dog or if you're visually impaired, because obviously the contrast is actually quite good to see where the cafes are. So we ended up leaving it to the businesses really, obviously, to decide. And yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions about anything to do with this guidance? Okay, in that case, in terms of debate, the options are on page 25 of the report, either to approve these changes as proposed or to further review any other changes that are wanted. Does anybody have any proposals or points of debate? Councillor Mason?
I suppose people could probably guess what I was alluding to earlier, but I do think there's a really hard balance here between a blue badge corridor that might be used 10 times a day, 20 times a day in a 8-hour period or whatever the times are, versus saying actually at that time when one car is driving by, you know, having to wait 2 minutes as a pedestrian would to move around them on a level surface. You know, I do think that needs more looking into properly, because I think it does exclude some businesses from being able to trade outside in a what should be a very safe and easy way to do it for everybody. But there's no real debate because this is what it is. But I just think it's one of those issues that long term, you know, there's potential there to allow more people to trade in a safe way, given the current use of the blue badge corridors.
Thank you. Any other views or proposals? Okay, I'll go ahead and propose option 1 then, which is to approve these changes to the guidance. Would anybody like to second that? Yes, or a couple of people, Councillor Cuthbertson. Okay. Any more debate, or are we ready to move to a vote on that? Okay, we'll take the vote then. All those in favour of option 1, which is on page 25 of the report, can you show your hands? Yeah. All those against? And any abstentions? Okay, and that is approved. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ellen. Okay, next on the agenda is street trading consent policy update. This is just an update, no decision to be made this evening, but just to better our and the public's understanding of this issue, which we have all been made aware of. So I'll invite officers to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Leslie Cook, the licensing manager for the council. As requested by members on the 8th of October, this report updates on the progress towards implementing a street trading policy. The council doesn't currently have a formal policy. There is guidance notes and decisions that have been made by the committee in the past. And street trading consents are subject to standard conditions. There's no legal requirement to have a policy. It's just a good practice. The City of York Council adopted the provisions within Schedule 4 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provision Act 1982 in 1997. Prior to that, the York City Council had adopted those provisions for the old York City Authority area. Street trading within the authority has been designated as consent street, so everybody who wants to street trade within York has to apply for a street trading consent, and that applies for private and public land if members of the public have free access to attend. We've got a list of established sites in the city centre where we have street traders, and that can be found at Annex 1. Make It York was established in 2014 and has responsibility for managing the city centre foot streets and to organise and oversee events. The largest event, of course, being the Christmas market. Consent fees for trading are individually assessed. The most expensive site currently pays £8,000 a year, and that is broken down into monthly instalments. Consents can be issued for a period of 1 year, and depending on the trading activity, some consents are issued for a shorter period. The draft policy can be found at Annex 2. Largely follows the existing provisions, with the key changes are highlighted on page 50 and 51 of the report. A consultation took place on the draft policy from the 8th of April to the 30th of June, and 20 responses were received. They will all of the consultation responses will be provided with the street trading consent policy report in due course. Most of the feedback related to paragraph 8.2 in the draft policy. Several consent holders spoke to the committee on the 8th of October and presented a charter of rights for street traders, which can be found at Annex 3. And they asked the council to consider that charter. Several consent holders met with Matt and I, along with representatives of Make It York, on the 24th of October to discuss through the concerns with regards to the draft policy. Make It York have agreed to accommodate street traders in their current locations for this year's Christmas market. In response to feedback, it is not proposed to continue with paragraph 8.2 as written in the draft policy, and therefore the condition 19 in the draft policy would no longer be relevant. Make It York desire to redesign the layout of the Christmas market remains, and so does consent holders' concerns about their livelihoods being at stake. Officers will continue to explore ways to resolve this. If there is no resolution, members will be invited to determine the position when considering the street trading policy. It is understood by officers that there is broad agreement around the other aspects of the policy. There is no provision to adopt a charter for street traders' rights. Officers are considering the charter and how it can be incorporated into the policy where appropriate. That's an overview of my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so we're not making any decisions today on what the wording of the policy should be or anything like that. This is just an update on what the situation is, what progress has been made in looking at this policy. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Waters?
Just to Leslie, are we still on track then to be asked to make a decision on the 4th of February? Is that still on course?
We were aiming for the March.
Have we got that in the diary yet? I mean, if possible, it would be good if it could go to March's full council meeting, so it would need to come to licensing before that.
Yes,
So that would be.
Yeah, we now do have a committee at the beginning of March for this, the other statement of licensing policy. So that more work is required between talking to the street traders, which we need to do again, and talking to Make It York again. And we'll determine if we're in a position to bring a policy that everybody is quite happy with, or whether it would be a policy decision with various options for members to determine how that moves forward, or we could maybe bring a further update report to say the policy has been looked at further.
Do you mind if I add, it says in the report on page 53, paragraph 27, that it's paragraph 8.2, which is contentious, and the rest of the policy, there's broad agreement. That's broad agreement from the traders and Make It York and officers, councillors haven't been asked if they agree to the policy yet, that we haven't.
No, that is just broad agreement between, street traders have said in
Yeah.
meetings that they're happy with the rest of the report, the policy, as have Make It York. It's just that particular aspect that's
So
contentious.
there hasn't been a kind of review of the policy to look at the options, and then we've agreed on this. It's more just an exercise in putting what currently happens into writing. There hasn't been agreement from councillors at any stage that this is on the rest of the policy, but there is from various people you've consulted with and had meetings with. Okay. Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Chair. It was actually just coming back. It was a supplementary really, because we're talking about agreeing the policy in March, but one of the speakers from Make It York mentioned the planning will start in January. So how's that going to work? Is there sufficient time, or do we need to bring it forward?
We appreciate that Make It York, that they'll get the review of this year's Christmas market, which then helps them consider next year's Christmas market and how things are going to be laid out. We know that Make It York have been asked to review the Christmas market layout again with regards to overcrowding, etc. Hopefully get some better feedback from this year's Christmas market from those people attending. So we are aware of that, but we also want to have a policy that comes before members that we do our best to try and take everything into consideration. So I don't want to be bringing a policy where members have got lots of arguments before them. I would rather bring something that's a little bit more cohesive.
Thanks. I did have another question. If I could just.
Is it a different question, or is it that?
It is a different question.
Can I come to some other people who've got their hands up and we
All
come
right.
back to you, please? Councillor Mason?
Thanks, Leslie. I've got a few questions. There's one about selling businesses, or if one trader gives up a pitch, you can't sell it on. How does it work? Are trading contracts in an individual's name, or could it be in like a limited company's name?
Bizarrely, this was one of the questions that was asked by the street traders at the meeting the week before last, and I have looked into it. And at this moment in time, we issue the consents in an individual's name. So the consent is issued to Mr. Tom Jackson. But as some of the street traders pointed out at a meeting, some of them are businesses or some of them are partnerships. And so we've got no issue with this issuing them in a company's name, and that will be going out in the renewal letter next year.
And I suppose it comes back to the selling point. So then if Tom Jackson Limited decides to change its directors, the company could still renew, or it still comes down to an individual?
If it's remaining within Tom Jackson Limited, we've just got some slightly different people.
Yeah.
That we would be happy with that. It's when, sorry, Tom, that
Yeah, sorry.
you should have started my direct dialogue. If Tom Jackson wanted to sell it to Ashley Mason,
Yeah.
we would be, you know, we would need to be in that process, because Tom owns his unit. He doesn't own the public highway.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I suppose, a bit like Hackney Carriages, and well, slightly different actually, because there's a lot of goodwill, I suppose, in street trading as an individual organisation, opposed to a one of 150 taxi drivers or something.
Have you got a supplementary?
I've got quite a few questions.
Could I come back to you?
Yeah, of course.
I'll do this again. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you. So huge thanks to the work you've done, Leslie, to get this down on paper, and all the work that's been done in terms of bringing together different parties. Having looked at this, I then compared it with some other councils and what their kind of policies they have. And the one thing that struck me here is I feel like there's opportunity for a bit more aligning it with some of our council plan and strategies. So in particular, our climate change strategy, our air quality action plan. So some of the other councils bring in a few extra clauses, and like one of the things we were just discussing just now about selling on of pitches and things, other councils consider tendering pitches. So I just wondered why we're not considering that, and in that case, that could help us align more with our objectives within our council plan if we were to tender and look for traders who were aligning with our each principles and so on. So I just wondered if it feels to me like it will be good to have a working group. Obviously, we're not going to develop a policy in time for February, so we'll have to have a different solution in the immediate term. But thinking over the next year, having looked at some of the other policies, I felt like there's opportunity for Yorkifying it and aligning it with our each principles and our other strategies. So I wondered if that's an option, that we take mostly what's on paper now and work with that for next year, but at the same time put together a working group to do some of that work, so that this time next year we've added some of those extras.
Right, with regards to environmental considerations, because we haven't had a policy before, I did include a section in the policy, which is on page 64. So gently introducing environmental considerations. I did this a few years ago with the taxi trade. And so gently introducing environmental considerations, but we haven't made it a requirement of a consent, because the policy, of course, is guidance and consideration. It isn't a condition of your consent. You will be A, B, C, or D, but that is something that could be taken into consideration in the future. We don't tender annually for street trading consents. If a city centre pitch becomes available, we do what we call an informal tender. So for those people who are on the waiting list and have shown an interest to trade in York, we would write out to those people saying that we have a site available and give some brief information about what we're looking for and most definitely what we're not looking for. And with that is, we then take into consideration all the applications that come into us, but that only does happen if a site becomes available. I take on board what you've said with regards to a further review of the policy to take those points into consideration and forming a working group. This is only an update report, so there isn't a decision on this report today, but we can, through the chair, we can discuss that further and seek people's views on that.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols?
Yeah, we heard from the speakers earlier that meeting, Cora, that you attended. Somebody who was in the middle of the two sides, have you a view on how the meeting went rather than just the two versions?
I mean, only that I appreciate all the time. It was quite a long meeting. I appreciate people taking the time to come in and discuss it and share options, share ideas, talk them through, see what might be possible.
And slight supplementary, other than Christmas market, is there any other areas of massive disagreement, or is it pretty much we're fighting over Christmas?
We did discuss what Make It York events there are. I think it's in the report. This year there's been a new Halloween event.
Yeah, Make It York run of it. I mean, we've got lots of events that take place in the city centre. We'll have the Vikings in a few months' time. We've had the Food and Drink Festival recently. They are events that take place in the city centre that Make It York allowed to take place, but that's a third party who's responsible for that event. So it isn't a Make It York run event. The events that are Make It York run, and I'm hoping I get these correct, of course, is the Christmas market, which starts a week on Thursday, which is the largest event in the city centre. We have the ice trail, which will take place after Christmas, where the ice sculptures are in various locations. And we've just had, it's the first time that we've had this event, but there's just been some activities in the city. We've had the big wheel in the city centre, which of course we've had previously, but we've had some Halloween-y type activities and autumn type activities in the city centre during the half term.
We'll come back to Councillor Clark. You had another question, didn't you?
Actually, that
Oh,
was nice.
Sorry, Councillor Nicholas, turn his microphone back on. Did you have a supplementary question? No, okay, right, sorry, go ahead.
Actually, mine was a supplementary. It was kind of related to that, and it was going to be my original question, which I guess was a little bit about the other festivals. I know that Make It York manage those as opposed to actually running them, but there was reference to overcrowding. So obviously, the Christmas market is overcrowded, but what about those other events like the food festival, for example? Are they overcrowded? Are there kind of mitigations that need to be put in place for those as well? Or, you know, how, I guess I'm asking, how does that work, and how do Make It York manage those situations?
The feedback that I don't want to speak for Make It York, because I know that they do their own surveys with people after the Christmas market. And of course, there is the feedback that people just sending without completing a survey. So I know that there has been some negative feedback with regards to feeling overcrowded during the Christmas market. Last year, Make It York, the Parliament Street part of the Christmas market, the layout of all the stalls was redesigned by Make It York. There wasn't a bar offering previously. We've either had the Thor's TP bar or something similar at the Halifax end of Parliament Street. So we didn't have that offering in the city centre. Therefore, the stalls could be spaced out better. So Make It York take into consideration the feedback that they get from people attending, and as well as within the licensing manager, I also chair the safety advisory group. So that's something that we as a group also take into consideration, and we've feedback to Make It York. You know, you've got to consider the safety of the people attending that event. But people do attend the food festival, they do attend the Viking festival, but in no means do they attend in the same footfall that they attend the Christmas market.
Thank you.
Councillor Mason, you had some more questions, I think.
I do. And I might have misheard this, apologies if I did, but I think when the Make It York representative was speaking, they talked about wanting to charge a fee to the street traders to relocate them within their footprint. Do you have any idea? Firstly, was that discussed in your meeting, and was there any kind of numbers banded around of what would a fee be for someone who's already got kind of a annual subscription, I suppose, to be there?
Again, I don't want to speak for Make It York, so I'm hoping I get this information correct. I believe that Make It York put the Christmas market locations out, and people can apply to be part of that. I'm hoping that Lisa nods at me when I say this, that I believe that there is a fixed fee depending on the size of your wooden hut, because some of them are however many wide, and some of them are larger. So there's a fee dependent on the size of the wooden hut. The fees for the 5.5 weeks of the Christmas market are considerably higher than our street trading consent fees.
So basically, there's an offer to relocate them, but at a fee. It's not we recognise that you're part of the York's economy all year round, so we'll find you a spot. We're happy to have you as a kind of a guaranteed spot, but you still pay for it.
I don't necessarily think that that's what Lisa said. I think Lisa was saying we're willing to have you as part of the Christmas market, but if we say we want you at point A, but you want to be at point E,
okay,
we may ask that you pay additionally to be at point E.
So there's almost a free offer and maybe an upgrade if you're not happy with the location.
Yes, I suppose that's a way to put it. Yes.
We might need to clarify the exact details and let the committee know rather than saying anything for sure right now. when we
One
can't.
suggestion, Chair, would be that Make It York actually are invited to the next meeting to properly be able to contribute, because I think members will have questions of Make It York, and it's such a significant part of the whole policy.
We can take that away and look at that as an option.
It will save a lot of
Yeah.
this in that debate.
Yeah, I think we'll have to take advice because they're not council officers. We'll have to, I'll make a note of it and we'll, look at that. I didn't, go ahead then.
Just to clarify, the, on page 48, you said the £8,000, whatever, that is paid to the council by the traders. On page 48, so in regard to STC fees, we get £8,000 a year, roughly, the most expensive.
Yes, that's correct.
That's
That's
paid to
that's the
council.
fee they pay to the
That's the
council.
council.
Yes.
If they have to pay for the Christmas stalls, that's not coming to City of York Council. That's going to Make It York.
Yeah, if you're in one of the wooden Christmas market huts, you pay Make It
So-
York that fee.
So York Council is going to say to these traders, give us £8,000 a year, except at Christmas, you have to pay somebody else having a stall within the City of York. Is the way out, unless I've read that incorrect, the answer to Councillor Mason's question.
No, I think Make It York for the £8,000 that they pay the council are willing to locate them somewhere within the Christmas market.
For a fee?
No,
Oh,
unless they don't agree with the location Make It York have proposed and they would like a different location. There would be a fee to Make It York.
We'll clarify with Make It York exactly what the offer is and let members know, I think, so that we don't accidentally say anything that isn't exactly correct. And then, Councillor Avilius.
It's just I have got a question, but a supplementary to that is just, or rather a comment, is when I looked at other councils and how they handle this, the only reason that a trader is moved normally is for emergency highways or something, not for someone else to use the space in a profitable way. So I think we need to be really, really clear on what we mean here. And I think we would be quite out of step with other councils if we were to say, most other councils, what I could see was you pay your fee. If it's an annual fee, then you have that mapped out pitch for the year. And obviously then we need to be looking at exactly how the market's organised, which that has to be reviewed in light of blue badge access as well. So I think just mapping out where those stalls are, we need to be very clear on that.
And if you have another question, yeah.
So it's just a note that we need in here something about the vehicle weights as well. So what vehicle weight we permit coming in on as a street trader, because it seems like there's growing vehicle weights from small vans up to buses and all sorts of things, and that has impact on our infrastructure when we start to have really heavy vehicles, and from a terrorism threat perspective as well. So,
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to say that if you're investigating having Make It York here, either at an update meeting or the decision meeting, then I think to answer questions, I think in fairness, we ought to have a representative of the Street Traders Association to accord them a similar privilege and better our knowledge, so we can ask them questions.
Yeah, we'll take advice on that and see what we can do. Okay. Councillor Clark, did you have a question?
Is it a question? I think it might be more of a comment.
Whatever, go ahead.
But it's kind of something to take away to Make It York, I think. So in terms, I mean, one of the speakers mentioned about the alternative locations and things. So if they can't be situated where they are most of the year, the street traders I'm talking about, then there'll be alternative locations. I'm not sure whether Make It York have been explicit. That's what I read from what was said, is that they don't know where those locations may be, and are those locations part of the review that they'll be undertaking in January 25? So if that is the case, will they then form part of what will be the policy? So will we have some understanding of what those alternative locations will be when the policy comes to committee. Have I been clear there? Or have I just rambled a bit?
If we were looking at bringing something to committee at the beginning of next year, that probably wouldn't be a consideration because Make It York have probably got quite a bit of work to do on the layout of the site. Because I know that there's a number of considerations that they have to take into account.
So it's likely that they won't have those alternative locations by the time the policy comes to committee in March, is that right?
I can't 100% confirm that, I'm afraid.
I think that's what I meant, is could we take that away to Make It York and ask that question, whether that is feasible,
Yeah, no
please? Thank you.
problems.
Can't see any other hands. Councillor Mason, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm already on. Maybe one for you, Sandra, or maybe one to be taken away. But I think it was right that Councillor Kilbane recused himself as a sub for the shareholder committee. And it's interesting looking at the directorship of Make It York and the leader, I think, or according to the council website, the leader is a director of Make It York. And the leader's also on the shareholder committee. Now, I can understand how an outsider looking in would find that an odd relationship, because clearly, you know, it's unusual in the past looking at others. It's never been directors on the shareholder committee. Obviously, the shareholder committee is about getting a return for the council, and just feels like I can understand how that doesn't look very transparent. So again, I'm not sure if a director should be on the shareholder committee or not, looking at past memberships of shareholder committees. But again, maybe just one to take away. And
thank you, Chair. Councillor Mason, yes, note what you say. I'm not sure to what extent that's a matter for this meeting.
I think transparency has been raised
yeah.
by the public.
Well, note what you say. I think just yes, it's like yeah.
I was just clarifying that appointments to committee are made through staffing matters and urgency in the period at which there's not a council meeting coming up.
Anyway, that's just a general observation. I don't need an answer.
Can't see any more hands. I had a couple of questions. Before you wrote this down, and just in the absence of a policy, what powers does the council currently have in terms of moving traders and where they can be moved to, and what rights do the traders have to their pitches? What are the current arrangements?
The current arrangements are the installation of the HVM bollards have really tested this one over the last 18 months. That if we have to move the traders because something is happening in the location where they trade, the HVM bollards been the situation for the last 18 months or so, it feels. We do our best to relocate the traders. We've worked with Make It York to relocate the traders around events that are on Parliament Street. It's not necessarily easy to relocate them, as Helena's pointed out clearly in her pavement café report. I've learnt more about pavement widths in the last 18 months than I ever knew before, and that a curb isn't included in a pavement width. So, you know, we've tried to relocate them while also leaving the correct pavement width that people can get by. So if we do have to move them, relocate them, we do our best. And as it is public highway, if we don't have an alternative place to locate them to, worst case, we would have to consider revoking a consent because we don't have a trading location.
Are there any other questions on this? Any other things that people would like to understand about street trading consents and what's happening? Councillor Mason?
Sorry, just one clarification point. I know Make It York was saying if the traders were going to operate under their kind of direction, if that's the word, at Christmas, they'd want to see stuff like PL and environmental health stuff. I imagine we have all of that already, do we, for them?
We collect certain information from traders at the renewal period each year, or if it's a new grant. We have liaised with the trader whose trading locations are on St Sampson's Square, and we have asked them to work with Make It York with regards to producing documentation so that they have that and comply with any safety requests from Make It York if there is one, and the trader has said that they will comply with that requirement.
I can't see any other hands, so thank you, officers, for the report, and thank you to everyone, Make It York, the traders, councillors, anyone else who's been involved, put work into this so far. We'll note the report, note the update, and then we'll just take a short comfort break before the next agenda item, just 5 minutes or so, and then we'll be back to start at 10 to 7. Okay, thanks, everybody. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 7, which is the Gambling Act Statement of Licensing Policy. I'll ask Leslie to introduce the report, please.
Right, this report asks members to recommend to full council that the statement as licensing policy, which has been consulted on, is approved. And we also seek that we can publish the revised local area profile. Gambling is dealt with by the Gambling Commission and the Licensing Authority. The Gambling Commission is responsible for issuing operator and personal licenses, and the Licensing Authority is responsible for issuing a premises licence, permits to gaming machines and small society lotteries. And we also accept temporary use notices and occasional use notices. Just so everybody's aware, an applicant cannot apply for a premises licence unless they have been licensed by the Gambling Commission and have an operator's licence. That must be in place before they can apply to a local authority. In April 2023, the DCMS published a Gambling Act Review white paper for the previous government. This has been put on hold by the new government, and they are also considering a review of gambling, and the DCMS are now awaiting further steer from the new government on that point. But gambling is on their agenda, so they're obviously looking at gambling in the bigger picture. It is a requirement of the Act that licensing authorities determine and publish a statement of licensing policy at least every 3 years, and the proposed revised policy can be found at Annex 1. The Gambling Commission guidance recommends that licensing authorities complete their own local area profile. The Business Intelligence Hub has reviewed the local area profile for me, and that can be found at Annex 2. A consultation took place from the 6th of August to the 13th of October, and a list of the consultees can be found at Annex 3. One response was received to the consultation from GamCare, and their response can be found at Annex 4. They have requested that public health approach to gambling is taken. When I started the review of the policy, and with some members around this committee as a working group, we actually had public health as part of that group because we did want their input. And they did provide information that is now an annex or an appendix to the revised policy. The number of licenses, permits and registrations currently issued by the council can be found on page 79 of the report. And I've added this line in because it was a question asked by a member earlier today. The last premise licence application we received was in 2013 for a bookmakers. So we haven't had a gambling premise application in some time. An equalities impact assessment has been completed with regards to the policy, and that is at Annex 5. The options before members today are approve the revised policy and make recommendation to council that the policy is adopted, and authorise officers to publish the revised local area profile, or option 2, amend the revised policy and make recommendations that the amended revised policy is adopted, and again authorise the publication of the local area profile.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, as Leslie said, we have had a working group to look at this policy. So thank you to all the councillors from all parties for all of your contributions and ideas and expertise that you've contributed to get this policy ready to come to our committee today. And thank you to Leslie and officers for all the work that's gone into it, and local partners and service providers as well, who in the working group, we talked a lot about the health impacts of gambling. So we went to local partners to find out about what the impacts are on people locally of gambling. So we'll start with questions. if anyone has any questions about any aspects of this policy, and then we'll have a bit of debate about what we want to recommend to full council. So does anybody have any questions about any aspects of this policy and local area profile? Yes, councillor Hook.
Yeah, this is probably irrelevant because there's no betting premises in rural West York. But could someone tell me what the 7 primary schools and 3 secondary schools are in rural West York? Because I can count 4 primaries, and if you count Askham Bryan College, 2 secondaries.
I can take that question back to the
Yeah.
business intelligence.
Because I think I would have spotted them in my travels. So, yeah, it's just if that's, you know, basic intentions, it just looks funny. But anyway, thank you.
So that's a question for the business intelligence unit who aren't here to answer that right now.
Yeah, thank you. It's very noticeable that the places with the greatest number of betting shops are also our highest on the index of multiple deprivation. So Clifton, Guildhall and Westfield. And that correlation is, you know, we're putting betting shops in locations where perhaps there's more vulnerable people. What kind of powers have we got in here, or what else? Is there anything else we could do in terms of how we're applying those licensing rules and in accordance with that index of multiple deprivation?
One of the things that licensed premises have to do, they have to do their own risk assessment for each individual premises. And as part of their risk assessment, we would expect them to be looking at our local area profile so that they know about their area. So once the local area profile is published, we will be letting all of our licensed premises know that we have revised the local area profile and where it is available for them to look at. We inspect all gambling premises annually, and as part of that inspection, we look at their local risk assessment that they have taken into consideration what is in their area and what risks they have to consider.
Any supplementaries on that? Your microphone's still on. Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a question to Leslie. Are you hopeful of some sensible guidance from government, you know, because as we read, Department of Culture, Media and Sport published a Gambling Act review. Without being too disparaging, there's so much of this work that you have to do and producing reports like this when it's largely irrelevant now because gambling can be done at press of a button. So are you hopeful that there will be sensible guidance eventually comes in from, as we've now got a new government, hopefully to free you from some of this bureaucracy?
I'm not sure what the new government's agenda is with regards to gambling. I know that they have been liaising with the Gambling Commission, and the Gambling Commission are working with the DCMS to steer any gambling matters. And you are correct that even though, I mean, we have seen a reduction in gambling premises in York since the Act came into force. And you just have to pick up your phone and you can now download a betting office or a casino or whatever it may be. So gambling is much, much, much more accessible to people than having to leave your home and actually walk to a shop and gamble. Gambling premises are obviously not yet a thing of the past because they are still there. So I assume that while there are gambling premises that need to be licensed, it will still be a local authority responsibility. But I honestly don't know what this review may bring.
Councillor Mason?
Is there any regulation in terms of things like the lottery and scratch cards and those type of businesses or businesses that sell those?
That's all done by the Gambling Commission. They deal with the National Lottery, and that is the most gambled on thing that people do.
Any other questions about anything in the policy or local area profile, or should we move on to debate? Okay, we'll move on to debate. So the options available to us are at the bottom of page 78. Option 1 is to approve the revised policy. Well, to make a recommendation to full council to approve the policy and to authorise the publication of the local area profile. Option 2 is to make any amendments that we think are appropriate and necessary and recommend the policy with amendments to full council for approval and authorise the publication of the local area profile. So any thoughts from anyone about the policy and any aspects within it? Would anybody like to propose either of the options? Any amendments or proposing it as it is? Councillor Cuthbertson?
Thank you, Chair. Unless members have specific areas that they wish to see tailored to some particular direction, and there hasn't been a lot of evidence of that so far, I think given the fact that the working party has put in a fair amount of time and the officers have also put in a fair amount of time to deliver this proposal, I think that option 1 is the route that we ought to go down, and I'd like to propose that.
Thank you very much. Would anybody like to propose any amendments to the policy, or would anybody like to second option 1? Councillor Baxter?
Happy to second that.
Okay, thank you. Any debate on that, or thoughts or other contributions? Councillor Kilbane?
Just to thank officers and the working group who've put a great deal of work in this. It really does show, you know, where we do have a problem, where we don't have a problem, why we need to control it. But as Councillor Waters says, you can just see in the graph that this is all just shifting online. And really, that's the area the government needs to get to grips with.
I can't see any other hands, so we'll move to the vote. Option 1 has been proposed and seconded, which is to approve the revised policy and make a recommendation to council that the policy is adopted, and to authorise officers to publish the revised local area profile. Can I see all those in favour by show of hands, please? Okay, all those against? And any abstentions? Okay, so that is approved. Thank you very much, everybody. The final item on the agenda is agenda item 8, which is just a bit of officers have put together a bit of an idea, a bit of a draft of what will be coming to the next couple of meetings. There are some policies that need to go to, either need to, or preferably we would like to go to March's full council, that more than can be fitted into one meeting really. So we've got a meeting in February, which is also in everybody's diaries, and we would like another meeting in early March, which I don't think we have a date. Do we have a date for it? Oh, we do. We did agree a date by email, but I can't remember what it is. But okay. Well, yeah, everyone will be informed of the date well in advance. Don't worry. Yeah. So anything to contribute on this agenda item, Councillor Waters?
It's just, you'd said before about you were going to ask about Make It York and hopefully a Street Traders Association representative coming to the meeting, and whether that was allowed. If it's not allowed, could I suggest that prior to the official meeting, we have a question and answer session with both representatives, just to further our understanding of matters.
Yeah, we'll look into what's possible. Absolutely. Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, it's just really a point of clarification, because I think I mentioned earlier that the street trading consent policy was coming in March, but it's down as February here. Are they swapped or?
That could have been my error. I've so fixed on March in my other statement of licensing policy, that could have been my error, so I do apologise.
That's right, thanks.
The Licensing Act policy, it has a statutory deadline which has to come to March's full council, doesn't it, at the latest? Whereas street trading policy is something that we would just like to have.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yes, statement of licensing policy under the Licensing Act has to be published. Go to March full council to be published, and that's a statutory policy, whereas the street trading policy isn't a statutory policy.
Councillor Mason?
My only observation there then, Chair, is that obviously the risk is if we slip any more than March, and I appreciate, Leslie, that is a huge piece of work, the policy, the licensing policy. Obviously, the licenses are renewed at that point, aren't they, anyway, for the next year? So
Which policy, sorry?
the street trading
Oh,
policy,
right,
if that
yeah.
does slip, because, you know, like you're just saying, the licensing act policy is the statutory one that must be delivered in March. You're saying we don't think we'll get the street traders in February, could be March. Obviously, we renew the licenses anyway, don't we, at that point, because of April? So I don't know, I think I'd like some more certainty about the timescale for that, because I think otherwise it does have bigger implications on those businesses.
Both of these meetings, the 4th of February and the one in March, will both be soon enough that any decision, any recommendations we want to make to full council, it'll be well ahead of the publishing deadline, so we can make recommendations for March's full council at either of those meetings.
That's fine. It's just how Leslie was talking then about that other one being a statutory policy. I didn't want any kind of, you know, Leslie to be too tired that the other one slips, if that makes sense.
I see what you mean. Do you want to?
If required, councillor Mason, if we're not in a position where we've got a draft policy that we feel that can come to members in February, we will look at bringing another well, I say update report, it might be a little bit more than an update report. It may request a decision from members with regards to, but I can't answer that question fully at this time. So, but a report would come in February, just even if it is just an update report to let members know where we are with that policy at that time.
I mean, ultimately, it's this committee that will be making a recommendation to full council on the wording and the content of the street trading consent policy. So if we're not ready to make a recommendation to full council in time, then the recommendation won't be made in time for March's full council.
Which is fine, but clearly that has consequences for these people's businesses.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it is a tight time frame, so I think keep the February date in, because if we're not in a position that we've got a policy that we can bring to February, and if we're bringing an update report, it could be the fact the update report is we're going to bring something to the March committee. However, if we're not in a position that we've got a set policy within the first 3 months of next year, street trading consents would have to be renewed. It could just be we're determining the duration that they're renewed for, but that would have to be taken into consideration once we know a little bit more where we are with the policy.
when we were on that agenda item about street trading consent today, there were various things brought up about things that councils might want to consider, which aren't currently in the policy and haven't currently been consulted on. So outside this meeting, we might just have to work on that. Councillor Villiers?
Just going to say, is it possible for us at this moment to agree to set up a working group to look at that policy? Or is...
No, not at this meeting, but that can be done. I think, as the chair mentioned earlier, the chair and the licence officer, I think, we're going to take away what's been said and then advise members outside of the meeting how they're proposing to take forward the various proposals, which may involve setting up a working group. I think you mentioned, Chair, you might sound out members' views on that outside of the meeting.
So we can decide to set up a working group whenever we like. It doesn't need to be a formal resolution in this meeting. That's just something as a committee that we can do.
Yes, Chair, there can't be a formal resolution at this meeting because it's not, there's no report. The report was only an update report, so there can be no decisions. So it can't be decided at this meeting as a resolution.
But it doesn't have to be decided in a meeting. We can just do it.
Yeah, outside, because it's not a statutory, it's not a constitutional matter. It's not a constitutional committee. It's just an informal working group that can be set up informally.
Okay, so we'll discuss that outside of this meeting. We'll look at what's possible and what's the best thing to do. Okay. Anything else on this agenda item? No? Well, that's everything on the agenda. So that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.